Cheers and salutations. Welcome one and all to Hard Lens Media. I'm your host, Kit Cabello. We are live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Central on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Odyssey, and Kick. And for our Can TV audience, this is our segment of our show where we do our interviews. And for everyone that's joining in, you might remember last week I interviewed Nick Thompson. He's part of this great organization called Ukan Foundation. And what it is to help reality TV stars, at least come over the trauma of the abuse and, well, the systems of neglect that we see on reality TV. Now, to be 100% clear here, look, reality TV show is a guilty pleasure that we have all partook in. But there's a lot of shady activities that are taking place, and there are long-term consequences that happen to it. And I think it's something that we do need to talk about, something we do need to address. And look, there's been many content creators on YouTube and social media that have addressed the dark underbelly of reality TV. And in this day and age where we have information at our fingertips, it's important that we understand just what exactly is happening. So I want to bring on a guest, and she is part of the UCAN Foundation. And Nick Thompson, again, I have to thank him enough for setting this up. Dr. Isabelle Morley. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us here. You know, when I was speaking with Nick about this, I really wasn't aware of overall what a lot of people partake in, especially when they, join a reality TV show program. And, well, some of the political and social red tape that comes with it, and then of course the long-term trauma to it. So for our audiences, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at the UCAN Foundation?
Absolutely. I am so excited to be here to talk about this. This is obviously a passion of mine. So my name is Dr. Isabelle Morley, like you said. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I got involved with the UCAN Foundation as Director of Mental Health Support, which means I oversee our network of therapists who have reached out, who want to work with cast members, who want to support advocacy and industry change. I oversee that network, and I work on advocating for industry-wide change from the psychological field standpoint. So talking to the APA and trying to get some regulations and guidelines in place for therapists who work in reality television.
So there's going to be some people who say, well, wait a minute. Everyone knew what they signed up for when they go ahead and get in front of the cameras, when the lights go on. I mean, it's reality TV. That's a normal pushback that you'll normally receive from people. But what are we missing exactly? Because the thing is, from what Nick was explaining to my audience, and from what I've also spoke to him about personally, there is a lot of control over how people are perceived and overall what they're told to do and how their freedoms are taken away from them, and the fact that there's zero regulation. Can you please explain to us overall what that's all about, and maybe go into a little bit more detail about what it does to a person, especially when the cameras are turned off, the lights go away, and the stage is finally empty?
Yes. And I mean, for everyone who watched your interview with Nick, I will say he opened my eyes. He and Jeremy, who was the person who thought of the UCAN Foundation and helped found it and create it, opened my eyes to what really happens behind the scenes, because I was a person who said, why are they complaining? They knew what they signed up for. They're making all this money off of it. They're on television. They're getting promotion deals, right? Like, it just seemed so wonderful. They're getting free vacations. They're finding love of their life. I was definitely a person who was judging any reality TV cast member who spoke out about their experience. So I have a lot of sympathy for people who still feel that way. What I will say, though, is that the more I found out about how they're treated, the more shocked, the more really, it just was unbelievable to find out that their freedoms were taken away, that they actually signed pretty restrictive, exploitative contracts, that the legality of it is questionable, but I'll leave that to the lawyers. But what I was really surprised by was the way they were treated psychologically. And by that, I mean, taking away somebody's credit card and ID so that they're not allowed to leave. They literally couldn't leave. They don't have their cell phones. They're stuck, trapped in a room, in a hotel room, on a set, is pretty scary for people. They are powerless. And then you add in all these other ingredients of what they do to cast members, right? They're usually sleep deprived. There's alcohol everywhere. Nobody's making good decisions. Sometimes they don't even have access to food, to water. They can't talk to people at home a lot of the time. They're put into these, we would argue, like, psychologically torturing situations, and then manipulated into producing certain story arcs. And generally speaking, they're not given mental health support before, during, or after filming, and they're kind of thrown out back into the world after this really intense, damaging psychological experience.
So I understand because even Nick couldn't really name names. I understand that you can't do that either. But from some of the stories that you have heard, what are some of the things that people have gone through? Because perception drives reality. I mean, it's easy for us to see. For example, when we're watching a TV show. We're able to find out who the bad guys are and who the good guys are. But at the end of the day, those are actors and actresses playing make believe characters, or either that reenacting a historical event. Of course, Hollywood likes to amp things up to 11. But with reality TV, though, people say that that's reality TV, and maybe that's how that person is perceived. Can you elaborate just a little bit more about what how a person is able to, I guess, maybe integrate back into a world when the world sees them as maybe a hero or a villain or as a joker? Can you explain a little bit more about that?
It's a complicated question, and my answer is going to be lacking because the only choice people really have is to accept and embrace their edit. A lot of their contracts restrict them from challenging the edit and saying what actually happened and how, the Frankenbiting changed what it looked like and how that wasn't what they meant. There's a lot of restrictions on what they can say. So the best thing they can do is just embrace whatever edit they have and make that their public identity. But that messes with people because it's often in contrast to their actual personal identity and sense of self. So some people talk about gaslighting themselves into thinking that this is the person that they actually are, in part because they have producers the whole time saying, be authentic, be true to yourself, but they're also nudging them to make certain decisions and take certain actions. And so by the end, people sort of have convinced themselves that they did what they think is authentically true to them, and it was their choice and they had free will, but they behaved in ways that were not at all consistent with their belief systems and values. And then the whole world thinks they are this person that they didn't think they are. And so some people are really questioning who they are in this deep existential crisis sort of way. And it's really hard to challenge that when literally the whole world is telling you you're a bad person or you're the doe-eyed innocent person, whatever it is.
Okay. So, dealing with mental health struggles, I mean, everyone has their own way of dealing with it. When you partook in helping up set up Ukan, overall, what is some of the things that reality TV show has, at least in regards to these large studios? I mean, is there any kind of social outreach or any kind of way to help people, like, I don't know, at least, hey, they had a fight, is there anyone to help decompress the situation, or is that just left out there in the wilderness? Because it just for me, it seems that there's this whole concept of, okay, the people are fighting or there's a situation taking place, but is there any like on hands personality, or is it just the studios are just telling them just to let go and be wild? I mean, is that the situation? And if so, have you reached out to any of these studios to at least ask what kind of regulations they're trying to put in place to at least protect people? Because at the end of the day, people do like to consume reality TV. I mean, people like seeing all the drama that we see on social media. I mean, it's human nature. Can you elaborate just a little bit about that?
You've struck upon something because how I actually got involved in UCAN was after
Mhm,
watching a Love is Blind season and
mhm,
seeing emotional abuse happen between two people and calling out the production for not stepping in. To allow this fight to continue and to allow this emotional abuse to happen, I asked, like, where was the production team to stop this, to intervene, to help them, to educate viewers? And from what I found out, there are really no on-set therapists. Even shows that claim publicly to have on-set therapists, cast members we talk to say that if they were there, they never had access to them. And when they were having a panic attack, nobody came and helped them. So what ends up happening is producers, or like the handlers for each person, are the on-set therapists. And the problem with this is that producers are not therapists. They're not trained, they don't know what they're doing, and they're trying to get a certain story outcome. So if you have somebody having anxiety about a decision they're going to make, you have a producer come in and make them feel better and calm their anxiety and sort of nudge them and tell them what to do. And the person ends up being manipulated by the producer. And that's not what a therapist would have done. So, generally speaking, no. As far as we've seen, there are claims of onset support, but we really haven't seen it.
wow. All right. Well, wait a minute. Sometimes when I see shows like Hell's Kitchen, for example, I see some sort of medical staff there, or because obviously being in a kitchen and for as much as it's being perceived, because again, reality TV, it's lights, cameras, action, and you assume everything is what it is. But when it comes down to restaurant service, Chef Ramsay isn't yelling for 5 hours straight. I mean, normally it's a regular cooking service, and then they have to edit to make it seem like any kind of moment where he is yelling at somebody, it's up to 11. But we see some medical personnel here and there. I mean, are there some shows that are the exception? But is the overall general rule is that there's no hands on set, there's no medical personnel? Because some shows see that, but how authentic is that? And have you spoken to people that at least have had some medical personnel or some professional that's not a Hollywood executive or producer on set? Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So competition shows where money's involved, where there's a prize at the end, actually have a little more regulation. They do have to have people on set for support. A lot of these dating marriage shows, there's no regulation, there's no requirement to have any kind of medical or mental health staff on there. So if they do, it's because they choose to. Typically, any mental health staff who are a part of it are part of production. They're not independent. They're being paid by the show, which means people are signing confidentiality waivers. So whatever they tell a therapist on set can go right to production. So what I've heard from people so this is what happens. I have talked to some people who use the on-set therapist because they're having a panic attack and they want to leave the show and they're begging to get out. So they send in a therapist to calm them down and keep them there because they don't want them to go. What ends up happening is the therapist, even if they're doing it in a good way, advocate for the person saying they're having a panic attack, blah, blah, they need a break. But production can do with that whatever they want. The therapist has no power to say, cut them a break today, they need 5 hours off. They have no power. They're just a part of the staff. So even if there is an on-set therapist, it doesn't necessarily help.
Okay, so when the person is, because we've seen the tabloids, we've seen a lot of posts on social media too, where a person who was on a reality TV show, and it could be anyone, any kind of program, where they're in trouble with the law or they have a full-on breakdown. Being on reality TV show, does it help, or does it I guess intensify somebody having a personality disorder, or either that intensifying other kind of mental health issues that they had or maybe might not have known they had, and leads to that? Has there been any kind of studies into that? Because somebody going through that, we've seen people go through meltdowns, and that's not good to see. That's terrible to see, especially when somebody is literally falling apart and they have lost all control of their own mental faculties. Is that something that's been looked into?
There's not a lot of research on this, in part because of these contracts. People are really restricted from saying anything about their experience, or they have felt that way and been threatened to not say anything. So there's not a lot of good research on the stats of that. What I will say from interviews and from what we know at the Ukan Foundation, it's one of two things. People go in knowing that they have certain psychological problems or struggles, and they disclose them to production, and they don't get weeded out from the group. And then post fact, they look at it and think, were they hoping that I would relapse? Were they hoping I would have a panic attack to give them that good drama, right? There's that storyline. And then there's people who say, I was in a really good place. I was psychologically grounded, and this show tore me apart. And people come out with anxiety, with depression, with substance use issues, with eating disorders. People report clinical symptoms of PTSD, flashbacks, nightmares, can't sleep, irritable, ruining relationships, really just from being on the show.
Well, then how is this even legal? I mean, is this all really just done with, corporate Hollywood and I guess the government not really looking into this? Because, obviously Hollywood has its own narrative, and is there any kind of push towards getting these studios to, stop abusing people? I mean, that's saying a lot, knowing that Hollywood has a long, dark history of abusing and chewing up actors and actresses and anybody that gets involved in the cesspool that I like to call Hollywood. But how is this even legal? Like, what kind of legal loopholes are these institutions doing? Because if there's a therapist on set and they're saying, "Hey, this person is a little, is going through something," they don't have the power to stop it. Then how is this even allowed to take place?
There are no regulations that people aren't unionized, cast or crew aren't unionized for these shows. People are signed up as contract workers, so they don't have any rights that employees have. And generally speaking, these shows are pulling people from everywhere across the country for a couple weeks, a couple months, maybe recurring seasons, and then sending them back to where they came from. It's really hard to get this group organized to advocate for contract changes, to advocate for their rights. And everybody is scared and threatened. And reality TV studios have a ton of money. It's not that hard to threaten somebody with a $1 million lawsuit to shut them up and make sure things don't change, which is what's been happening.
When you guys set up Ukan, obviously these reality TV people who are involved, these men and women that do sign that contract and do get in front of the cameras, when they're threatened by these major studios, I mean, an average person seeing a major studio, that's, it's a titan. It's something that you can't really win. It's the world's most one-sided fist fight. But when your organization has been set up, have you received, or has your organization received, any kind of pushback from these studios that are telling you, hey, stop doing this, stop advocating for this, because it's kind of making them look like the bad guy? And the last thing any kind of Hollywood or anything, the last thing Hollywood needs right now is more bad publicity, knowing the fact that they are losing audiences, and people aren't tuning in as much. They don't need one more punch in the face because of how they're treating people for these reality TV show programs. Has your organization got any kind of pushback from these studios?
So far, no, we haven't
Oh,
gotten
thank goodness.
I'll say any direct pushback or any pushback that we can verify. So I'll leave it at that. I'm
Mhm.
sure that they're not happy with us. But honestly, as I'm sure Nick has mentioned, our goal here is not to end reality TV. Our
Mhm.
goal would be to work with studios so that they're producing these shows ethically, so that they are not tearing people apart psychologically and not paying them and restricting them from speaking the truth about their experience. We would love it if we could partner with them and make this an industry that is both ethical and entertaining. And I think both can be done, but we're definitely at sort of this breaking point of that decision.
As someone who's been in this profession, and you're dealing with mental health and dealing with people's personal issues, how has this impacted you and your studies in regards to how people deal with emotional trauma? Because you said at first, when you first heard about reality TV stars speaking out, and you said, like, and I have said, and probably a lot of people said, well, they signed a contract. How has this affected your view of your field in regards to seeing how people are reacting towards, I guess, the trauma and the aftermath of reality TV? And has this opened up a new kind of concept and study in regards to how people deal with the 24/7 news cycle, the constant lights, camera, action? Because we have our smartphones, and every day might as well be reality TV. We see all these ridiculous posts on social media, some being the most horrific, some being the most funny, some being the most tear jerking. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think my field in general, the view of it on media and social media and our life is that it's generally a negative. People trying to post their perfect lives and present themselves in a certain way doesn't make them happy, doesn't make people who view that happy. And I think learning more about reality television, what happens behind the scenes, and learning more about social media and what's
Mhm.
real and not has really convinced me and my whole field that the only real thing is your actual, in the moment, lived experience. Everything else you're seeing has been manufactured, has been edited, has been very intentionally picked and shown to you. And you just can't decide that that's true and real, because it's probably not. And even if it's true, it's not the full story. So I would just caution people when they're watching anything to remember that it is not actually reality.
Now, this doesn't have to deal with reality TV, but we've seen a lot of people who do the 24/7, or at least try to do, or as often as they can, the reality stream, which is like a Twitch streamer, YouTuber, or someone on Kick, live streaming their lives 24/7. Do you think the concept of reality TV has kind of went into social media to where people want to get that spotlight for themselves? And obviously streaming platforms, I mean, if someone's going to be a content creator, they could do whatever they want, or at least produce whatever kind of content they do want, give or take, because of there's guidelines. But there's the whole concept of the 24/7 reality TV show, or is it at getting that stardom? Do you think reality TV show has at least led to the concept of somebody looking for instant fame? And are there still some long term consequences for the idea of reality TV show being introduced to the public, because everyone apparently, we've all thought about being a star or being the front and center person, but there's always a consequence. Be careful what you wish for.
Yes, absolutely. I think reality TV has really, if not kickstarted, skyrocketed the role of parasocial relationships in our lives, because it's real people. You're watching them and you think that it's what they're actually like, and you feel close to them, right? Like celebrities are a farther reach for a parasocial relationship. It's hard to feel close to them because their lives are so incredibly different than ours. They're at award shows and huge charity events, but reality TV, they look like regular people, and we get very emotionally attached because shows do a great job to make us care about these people. And I think that's the reason why people go on them, is because then they've already got an audience who thinks that they know them, who cares about them like a friend, or hates them like an enemy, and will follow them on social media and invest in whatever they're saying. People who stream are doing the same thing. They're trying to offer you like the friendship experience, right? Like, you're in my life, you see what I do, and I care about you, and I'll write back to you in the chat. It's, again, this parasocial relationship that makes people feel sort of connected. It's not as meaningful and real as somebody in your actual life who you see in person and know intimately, but it makes people feel less lonely.
Yeah, that is a concept, because when you see reality, because when I've watched reality TV show, there's people who I do root for, there's people who I don't like, but as the older I got, I think you're able to see, okay, well, this is being manufactured that way, or this person isn't like that, or either that they do a real interview, and you see who they are, and they're calm and they're chill, or either that are saying, well, that wasn't everything that was caught on camera. Um, if there is anything that you would want to say to somebody who would want to consider being part of reality TV, or either that, let's say, people who want to consume reality TV show content, what are the kind of things that we should at least look out for in regards to the programming, or is it at the stuff that we see? Because yeah, people want entertainment, people want to enjoy something, but overall, I think we're not really aware of the cost that people who are involved in said programming go through, and in many ways that does impact us, because you talk about parasocial relationships.
Yeah, I would say be entertained. Watch it and be entertained, but don't assume any of it is real or true or an accurate representation of the person that you are watching. If you have a strong reaction, only share the positive one. If you
Mhm.
hate someone on a show, there is really no need to tell them that you hate them. Assume that they are basically acting, because the amount of manipulation and editing that happens, they may as well be acting. And what I like to tell people is, if it was somebody in your personal life who was the villain on a show, you would have so much empathy and you would be outraged by the way they're treated. And what people don't know is, for a lot of these shows, they do really intense psych evals ahead of time. They do written administrative tests, they do clinical interviews. They get to know people incredibly intimately, their relationship histories, their parents' relationships, their substance use, their anxiety, whatever it might be. And all of this information, again, is given right over to production. Contestants sign a waiver saying they will waive confidentiality and they will never see the results of the testing, and it goes to production. And so the production team has all of their most intimate, vulnerable moments, which they use to create their story. So imagine, like, the worst experience you went through, having somebody sit you down in a chair with a light in your face and for 2 hours asking you about what it was like when your father left your family because he didn't
Oh,
love you. That's what happens to people. And so you see them crying and you're like, wow, they really just opened up so quickly. That's not the case. So just have empathy for people. It's incredibly hard.
that is oof. Ooh,
Yeah.
because we all go through that emotional trauma, and as someone who at least was brought to the awareness of the aspects of Love Is Blind, because Nick Thompson and Jeremy Hartwell, who are also part of Ukan, were part of that second season. There was a whole bunch of tabloids that came afterwards. Some of the concerning aspects, especially with personal relationships, because human beings, we are social animals, and all of us want to find true love, or either that, have that person next to our heart. At least for some of these couple programs, or where someone's trying to find love or marriage at the end of it, what are some of these concerning aspects? Because I think once you get to the end of that said show or season, the couple's married, and hey, it's happily ever after, but it's never the case, because you really can't know somebody in like 2 weeks or a month and then expect a 40-year marriage. It's just, that doesn't add up.
It doesn't, no, and some couples have made it and made it work, and that's wonderful, and it's an anomaly. It's putting people through such intense trauma that the best case scenario is, I mean, they're socially bonded because they got through a traumatic experience together, and they happen to be a good fit and secure and good communicators, so it's gonna work out. But
Mm.
many of these shows are actually setting people up to fail. They're putting in incredible barriers to making a foundation to a wonderful relationship marriage and then throwing people out, even though their premise is to bring people together to find love and marriage. They really do things to exacerbate people's attachment issues or to just for their own psychological wellness damage them, and then they don't take any responsibility for it afterwards. And as a couples therapist, obviously this gets me really upset because I understand modern dating is awful. People are looking for a way to find the love of their life or have a unique experience. Of course they go on these shows. I totally get it. But then they're set up to not have that, to fail, and then for everyone to watch it happen. It's really upsetting.
Yeah, the modern dating in the modern world with Tinder and everything else. Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. As I like to tell my audience, what could possibly go wrong with the 24/7 social media and everything that we're bombarded with? For your organization, what kind of programs or events are you guys working on in order to expand the outreach? Because I know there's probably a lot of people out there who were either part of reality TV show programming and maybe are afraid to speak out. I mean, you have done, and Nick explained perfectly like how you guys keep everything anonymous, how people can at least reach out to you guys. But is there any kind of programs or events or things that are going to be happening so that more awareness is brought to this? Because the studios, that are in charge of putting people together, making these reality TV show programs, they're going to keep getting away with it until more people say enough. Just like how a lot of people are saying enough to the deplorable behavior that Hollywood and these executives are doing, but yet they still keep on doing it because the government's not getting involved, state governments aren't getting involved, and there's overall the continuous cycle of abuse that we see over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are definitely a safe space for people.
Mhm.
People who want to speak up publicly or who do not, they can always come to UCAN, talk to Jeremy, talk to Nick, talk to myself, whoever they want. They can share their story, and we are there for support. For people who do want to speak out, we are able to get them legal resources so that they can have somebody review their contract and make sure that they feel safe speaking up about whatever they experienced. And we're hoping to put some pressure and open things up for people to feel comfortable in terms of like NDAs will hopefully be a thing that are erased from this industry. I'm writing articles for Psychology Today and getting involved with the APA to try to push some new regulations for therapists so that people feel safer in that realm, that the therapist who does their evaluation or who is on set is actually an advocate for them. But really, this is just going to require people over time being brave, speaking the truth, withstanding whatever the studios throw at them in terms of threatening letters or lawsuits until the whole thing breaks open, which I think is what's going to happen probably pretty soon. Everybody is sick of the NDAs, of the secrecy, of the lies. So I
Mhm.
think we're on the verge of that happening.
And I think that's a fantastic note. And I am very curious to see just overall what you guys are able to do going forward. So, as a final note, I want to share this with my audience here so they can see firsthand, a little bit more about UCAN and what you guys do. Again, a UCAN Foundation, the UCAN Foundation is a network of reality TV participants and mental health and legal experts dedicated to supporting cast members. Our goal is to provide cast members with resources to make informed decisions, understand the reality of productions, and seek help in a safe and supportive environment, which is great. Because look, I don't want to see anybody get hurt, and I don't want to see anybody have a breakdown. And I think it's important for us to really hold these studio corporations accountable for their actions of abuse, which is a long, sad history. But perhaps that's a conversation for another day. But for you, Doctor, is there anywhere people can follow you online and on social media so they could read more about your work, see more about your studies, and also your outreach to others?
Yes, absolutely. You can find me at Dr. Isabelle Morley on Instagram, or
Hmm.
you can find me on my Psychology Today blog, which is called Love Them or Leave Them, or my
Hmm.
website, which is drisabellemorley.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Doctor. We do appreciate your time. Want to give a huge shout out to Nick Thompson for also helping us get you on your on our show, and we're very grateful for that. I ask you to just keep on doing the great work, and more importantly, to everyone out there, it's always important to take good care of yourself. And if you're considering being part of reality TV, just maybe it's important to read the contract before you do anything else. Any other final notes you want to bring up before we move over to the main show, Doctor?
No, I think that was a great summary. And just remember, empathy first. Empathy
Yep.
first.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Isabelle Morley. Again, folks, we'll be posting the links to all of our social media when this interview is clipped to our Can TV audience. If you want to learn more about Hard Lens Media, follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Rockfin, Odyssey, and Kick. I'll see all of you for the next main show. So stay tuned. We're going to take a short little break and set up for the main show. Again, Doctor, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Our society and our world are full of these invented and built up and contrived facades. And sometimes some people come along with a hammer and smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
Welcome to the future. Shit where you please. The Wi-Fi's killer, but there's no more bees. So there's hardly any flowers, there are very few trees, and you'll pay $1,000 for some honey for your tea. But we got these awesome collars, mine's an Apple Model 3. It allows for better movement than the Tesla X Elite. It lets you customize the ads that it implants in every dream. And for premium subscribers, doesn't shock you in your sleep. But it doesn't stop there. It can analyze your speech, and if it hears disinformation, then it notifies police. It's a swift re-education, but it knocks you off your feet like your booster every 7th week. I faced the future boldly with 2 eager open eyes, and I picked a couple nuggets up that blew my fucking mind. Like you can taxidermy someone while they're technically alive, and they'll shine when it's election time. See, the Democratic voter base will pay them zero. Never mind if voting for the scarecrow is a vote along their party lines. They could stare into its marble eyes and claim there's something dignified. Unlike real politicians, this one doesn't need an oxygen or kit supply. But its function is the same as those who came before. The goals are never misaligned. It still spends all its working time performing pre-recorded fleecing sessions where it sugarcoats your slow and hungry genocide, while pouring billions into Nazi coffers, all the while selling you the story that we're moments till the MiGs arrive. So fuck it, ask Zelensky if he'll help replace our leaded pipes. Watch a fleet of Penske's show stacks of bills in every size. Guess it only took a black sun and a couple Heils. Honorary goose step and some Nazi boots a quarter mile, all while Biden sneers his sordid smile. I don't know what was in this morning's vial, but it makes him stare 1,000 yards through all the prompters and the cards like he can smell the nearest child. His eyes are wide and wild, wider than the grave in which another 1,000 families were tossed in as I typed until they rose up to the sky unceremoniously piled. Which sort of flies right in the face of all this network ticker tape where the American economy has superhuman vitals.
And sometimes some people come along with a hammer.
See, I like to think my trial's gonna play like a recital. I'll denounce the world around me and accuse the most entitled, who weaponize their titles, whose pull is something title, who'd starve us all to death to best delight their blighted idol. So they might destroy the record, and I will never get to vinyl. So my word is not immortal, but it's final.
It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash